Welcome everyone on this new episode of Let's Talk AI. Today I'm super happy to be with Houssem Chihoub. Houssem, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Thomas?
I'm super good. I'm super happy to have you on the show today. For everyone who is tuning in, Let's Talk AI, the podcast where we discuss in depth with experts around data and AI. Today we have the honor to have Houssem. You have quite an outstanding record. Maybe for the people who might not know you, could you introduce yourself in a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So yes, I'm Houssem Chihoub. Today I'm a solution architect focusing on data and AI at Databricks. So I'm a data and AI enthusiast. I've used a few years working in industry since basically 2010, where I have taken various roles, including roles in academia, roles in industry, working with customers, solving data and AI problems, and trying to help them actually to achieve their goals every day, basically. Yeah.
Mm.
Outside that, maybe, I'm from Algeria and I love sports, football, reading about history, maybe hiking, watching Netflix movies and series and so on. So a lot of fun stuff also outside work. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to come back on different points. Maybe I'd like to know about the state of the art of Houssem Chihoub. So what do I mean by that? I mean like what are you currently working on? What are you most interested on? And do you have a why on everything that you're doing today? So you said that now you're currently at Databricks, but before you were at AWS, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so do you have a could we have a maybe short version of your state of the art? What are you most interested in? And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that question. So, yeah, I started working basically in academia back in 2010. And the
Okay.
main reason for me choosing this kind of field is related to cloud computing. That was an emerging technology with early also big data systems around Hadoop. So I fell in love with that kind of technology, cloud plus data, and that's something that drives me throughout my career and later on with machine learning and the incredible, let's say, advance in AI. So yeah, I'm driven by technology, and as you mentioned, I've worked for AWS and more recently Databricks, two pioneers in this space of data and AI that work to enhance everyday technology and help customers actually solve the hardest problem that exists out there. And this is like very fun, very challenging, but also something that gives you this maybe great opportunity to look into the advancement and the state of the art of what's happening in data and AI.
Hmm. Amazing. Well, I have many questions on this episode. Also, quick question: um, what do you most like about cloud in general, like cloud infrastructure and just the cloud? Like, what are you most interested in? Like, why do you like it so much?
I mean, if there are lots of benefits, but if you may take one or two, it would be this elasticity and agility. I'll give you an example. In the past, I used to work for this company actually working on this production environment. We deployed this Hadoop infrastructure and environment, and it used to take us few months to add a new node to the infrastructure or the cluster existing. Now you need to buy hardware, you need to buy these expensive servers, and it will take few weeks to get delivered. And then you need to introduce that to your system, maybe include it in your hypervisor, and then start to install the most relevant things that you need for your platform to do that in order to provide this kind of data platform. With the cloud, you can do that in a few minutes. Just
Hmm.
come with the credit card and you can start that in a few minutes. And imagine that you have this seasonality, like you are working in retail and you have this big Black Friday event, and suddenly you go from like few servers to hundreds of servers because you need to do that actually in space of just that period of time. And with the cloud, you can just actually add those servers to your existing infrastructure, no hassle.
Hmm.
And then there is this agility, and this is maybe probably one of the overlooked aspects of cloud computing today. because people look at TCU, look at the cost, and look maybe at this elasticity, which is pretty much well known. But the agility is how like cloud transform this area of helping developers and users go there faster. They don't actually focus on the heavy lifting related to infrastructure, maybe on how to set up like these kind of platforms or software, but rather actually have this in managed way, either as a service or as a managed service, or maybe a SaaS software as a service, where actually developers, users, and different personas actually can just go and start focusing on what it matters for the business. What is the different business differentiator, basically. I don't like pass my time maybe installing Kafka server or maybe Hadoop server or this like Oracle instance. I go right to the goal. What do I need for my application and maybe my business differentiator? And this will save like hours and hours of engineering work and integration work, which translates into more agile business and faster time to market. That's one of the most important aspects to cloud computing today, and why maybe every company should look at that.
Yeah, amazing. Makes sense. And following up question, that's kind of drifting off what I wanted to ask you. I would like to do a kind of a retrospective of your career, what you've been doing, like just overview of like key moments in your career. But continuing on that path of just cloud, just out of curiosity, do you feel that architects and uh, I would call them maybe machine learning engineers or people who are like ops guy, data ops, and so on, DevOps, ML ops, LLM ops, all those roles, it feels like for people who just entered the industry, um, it's like um, certifications cloud directly. There are not many opportunities to go build a Hadoop cluster on a client instances. Maybe they are, but I would guess less than building things in the cloud. So do you feel that having this hands-on experience, just knowing receiving the server, building up, making sure the resources allocate correctly, and having felt that pain, do you feel that it makes you a better architect, better engineer, better working with different pipelines and so on? And do you feel that, would you recommend for people to just try it once or maybe like dig into it?
I mean, there is definitely lesson learned there, like going from there to more cloud and agile environment changes a bit things. And definitely, you go from a model of deploying infrastructure that is slow, a lot of pains, and you learn a lot of lessons.
Hmm.
Most of those lessons, to be honest, are transferable to the cloud. When you go and work on any service, or maybe set up a platform or application, you must always think about what should I do for disaster recovery, for reliability, availability, and all those questions.
Hmm.
However, now you have the tools. You are equipped with the tools to do it faster and think about it faster.
Hmm.
So yeah, you gain time, you go in efficiency, but the question are more or less there, and you have to think about them. Now, whether I recommend for people that just started with this kind of let's say topics today, and in order to go back and do it how it used to do to be, I'm not sure that's a good idea, because computer science is advancing all the time and things are coming more and more, and you don't have to do everything in order to get to learn the lessons. I mean, sometimes you need to focus on what is there in the market. So what are people using, companies, what are they using, and you need to adapt to those technologies and to those tools. Maybe you do your homework about how to do things more efficiently in good way. But yeah, definitely, unless you are required actually in your experience or in your work to go and deploy Hadoop infrastructure or at like on-premise infrastructure, my recommendation, probably spend that time on learning more about new technologies, more things that are like, let's say, trendy in the market and can help you get jobs, can help you get new roles, and maybe also help companies in that area.
Amazing. All right. Coming back on your career, so can you share a kind of a quick retrospective of what you've been doing, how it started,
Mm,
and where you're at, even though you kind of share this last step?
mm. Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I started in academia with the PhD. So I did
Hmm.
this PhD between 2010 and 2013 at INRIA. This is a National Institute of Research in France, and it was this center in particular was located in Rennes, which is in Brittany, the west of France. And I had this amazing opportunity actually to work in this environment to look further into the future and start focusing right away on data in the cloud. And my
Hmm.
dissertation was basically about that. Maybe I was specialized a bit more into data consistency, but basically the big topic was data in the cloud. It's there where actually I still remember I got this allocation for using AWS, the cloud at the time. It was back in 2011. It's
Wow.
not AWS you probably know today. It was like EC2, S3, SQS, and few services. And yeah, I got this allocation for 2 years with the amount of $7,500 that got me this chance to work on AWS and discover this amazing actually platform that could help customers in the future develop more into a cloud world. And there also, just for the anecdote as well, that it was the time for Hadoop one, or maybe even less than one, and it was really earlier version of Hadoop with the architecture based on job tracker and a lot of failures, and these were like big data early days,
Wow.
and yeah, it was funny to see how the we got from there to here today.
Yeah.
I remember also during that PhD that I had this. One of my favorite papers that I actually cited in some of my research work, and it was the paper about Apache Spark. It was by this group of Berkeley, and one guy called Matei Zaharia that was doing a PhD back in 2009 that published a paper that says, okay, we can do better than Hadoop. We have this thing that we call Spark that can do things in memory, and yeah. So from there, I worked into several projects with companies like NEDs in the frontier, a bit of academia and industry. So we apply a bit research and the latest trends from research into industry and help in this R&D project. NEDs build data lakes, also this initiative around smart meters, electricity or power smart meters, and how to
Mm.
analyze, collect data, and everything. I worked also for 2 years as a freelancer now, where basically had one customer, which was Air France KLM. And there I had this opportunity actually to work in a production environment, deploying these huge Hadoop clusters, ensuring their availability with Hortonworks. And we have this like Air France KLM. So this is like the aviation company or the travel company in France and the Netherlands with sites over France and Netherlands. And it was amazing also to be able to participate in this team and provide data as a service there. So it was basically an internal cloud at Air France KLM, and we worked in to providing these data services. But since then, I joined back in 2021 AWS, where I worked as a solution architect with focus on analytics. I was covering services like AWS Glue, EMR, Lake Formation, Athena, and Redshift, working with various customers in the EMEA region, and these are customers in different segments of different sizes, from London to Dubai, actually covering all that area, and help them actually solve their data problems and AI problems every day.
Hmm.
And back in 2023, since July, I joined Databricks, the data and AI company, to work more as a solution architect, covering enterprise customers in France, and with focus on data and AI actually, and all those advancements and trends around LLMs as well. So yeah, that's just in few minutes a bit my career and how I got from a PhD to Databricks.
We'll get back on many of what you commented. Very impressive track, and yeah, so many questions from here. I think the audience could ask themselves like, how can I ask? I wish I could ask all the questions that should be asked. Let us know in the comments if I missed on. We'll make sure to answer them afterwards. You said something super interesting about the the genesis of Hadoop. And that's crazy to me because in less than around 10 years things have changed so much. And well, that's true in general in technology, but when you think um, of just the first versions of Hadoop, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like HDFS, Yarn, and MapReduce, correct? And with Hive, was that the stack at the beginning, or was it less, or was it?
It was even more basic than that. Actually, Yarn was a big improvement of Hadoop. So before Yarn, there was this thing called the job tracker, this is single
Okay.
point of failure that make actually deployment at scale a nightmare, and there was HDFS, MapReduce, and basically this MapReduce based on this job tracker API. And just after like Hive and Pig, this solution called also Pig. That's the
Yeah.
big or the core of Hadoop at the time. And
Mm.
Yarn actually came as MapReduce too, and that was already a big improvement at the time.
Mm. And it's funny that you mentioned that it really shows like for how long you've been in the field, because a lot of the time we can hear like, oh yes, when we went from MapReduce to Spark, that was awesome, but you're speaking before MapReduce, and that's super interesting. The fact that you had the AWS access in 2000, was it 10 2010
11, yeah, 11.
2011. That's very interesting. Maybe a few things to ask around that. You mentioned academia and business, and you said that during your career you've been at the limit. You mentioned that you've done your PhD. Um, what do you like most working with users, with clients, and working in academia? And how does the both combine to make you a better professional?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, both have advantages and something that are less fun compared to the other. But I'd like to say maybe in academia, the metrics, the goals you are working towards are completely different. You are working to solve problems for sure, but you are working more to publish, to advance, let's say science here, the technology to be more honest and precise. And you basically specialize. You specialize a lot. You take like a hard problem that the industry probably is facing, something usually practical, try to imagine like solution for it that probably can be deployed tomorrow, but in most cases it's not going to be deployed tomorrow. It's not going to put into work tomorrow. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, like let's say Spark was introduced in 2009 and starts really be used from 2014. And there, like you specialize, you go very deep, like technically very deep. You maybe get obsessed over the problem, and you work on very something very like narrow. Like you
Hmm.
take small problem and you spend time and time mastering it and finding solution to it.
Hmm.
And then maybe you will have results that you publish in conferences, and that's your ultimate goal. Then maybe you publish that, work in projects, and get known because of that, and so on. However, that's very amazing intellectually, like it's stimulating, it's challenging. You are working on like very hard problems, to be honest, and you have maybe some colleagues are that can be the most brilliant in the area and in the world, basically. But maybe what is missing is you miss that interaction with the customer. And when you go to business or industry, you are working with customers, and when you work with customers, you are really having that satisfaction to work towards something that is really useful. It solves a business problem. You will feel it. Like if you are working for Air France, for instance, that's metrics around, let's say, airplanes, like maybe for predictive maintenance, or maybe that's like to help them, um, uh, let's say, have a better forecast for travelers, and so on. So these satisfaction of solving real business problems and maybe help companies achieve like their goals is also never overestimated. It's always good to have that feeling. Maybe the challenges are less, to be honest, and usually problems you are working to solve are less complex than when I used to do, for instance, in academia, but more satisfying and more, let's say, broad compared to academia, because are focusing on a broad area of technologies, of architecture. You think more about solving those problems for the customer. It will depend really on what is existing for them. It's really practical, and that's always satisfying. So yeah, I mean, it's two different worlds. Maybe they overlap technically and on the technology and how to solve the problems, but ultimately they diverge on the goals you set for yourself and maybe set for you by your organization as well.
Hmm. Makes sense. Well, I'm really impressed with anyone I've talked who's more his or her more in academia. It's like you have your eyes on the edge of the state of the art constantly, and you're trying to push that. And then when you go on a business environment and you understand like the codes and how it works and so on, it really feels that for except for like companies such as OpenAI, Databricks, AWS, where like technology is really advanced and people are very good, very advanced. Some people are working in academia for these companies, but it really feels that when someone have a very deep interest in academia in the beginning, but then they solve business problems. It is really a bridge, an interesting bridge from my perspective. Whereas we have an eye on the state of the art of things, latest papers, but we also have in mind what we want to implement for the clients, for the business. Most of the time it isn't as complicated as you said, and like when you push so far in academia, then you have so much power to solve business problem. It feels like that to me. Obviously there are like some differences, and some people in academia don't want to go more in the business side, but do you want to comment on that?
I definitely bring a very interesting point there, and I'll add something to that as well. Like when make that transition, and this is one of the first things I understand early when I start to work on the frontier of technology or academia and business, is you have this view, maybe holistic view about what's happening in data and AI, and you are excited. You are always looking for the latest releases, what the latest problem solved, what they release, like every like big vendor in the area, and so on. And you immediately want to apply that to solve those business problems. But the reality is the business is not keeping up with that. It's not always at that edge. And it may be, as you mentioned, true for some like digital native companies or maybe some startups. But like for big companies, they always have this technological debt and they don't follow that. That can create frustration, to be honest. And more or less, I mean, you want to solve problems and you have your vision for it because you used to have this liberty when you were at academia. Then you come and you hit the production, they tell you, no, this is not approved by our CISO. This is not a solution we bought. This is not a solution we intend to deploy, and so on. So you have to work with what's approved, what is there, and those business limitations. And to be honest, those are more political issues sometimes within companies, are more like organization based limitation that you have to work around. And obviously you have to answer sometimes to architects when you are beginning. Maybe you are one of the architects, but then you have to answer to stakeholders. Always have business limitation, technology limitation, and you have to navigate and work through that. Those frontiers do not usually exist in academia, I mean, from technology wise. And you have to navigate through that and maybe work with the frustration. Now, what's you need to understand sometimes, and maybe keep in mind when you're making that transition, is how to do that while not losing that sharp mind of yours you trained over the years in academia. You develop this sense of like capturing new technologies, new concepts very quickly. You are like always looking for that, and when at some point when you can't use that, you may lose that. So you always have to find this equilibrium between actually doing the work at product in production, helping companies solve the problems, but at the same time keep in mind what's coming on. Sometimes when it will go like this: pitch small idea to the team, to the stakeholders, and start maybe preparing a POC few months in advance, maybe try to help them look a bit in the future. And sometimes if you can't work over those limitations anyway, still keep that for yourself, for your career, for your growth. And maybe one day this will come at your current job, or maybe the next, when you can help your company see bigger maybe and work bigger at your scale, of course. But yeah, that's one of the elements of frustration when you switch from academia to business and industry, for sure.
That's a super interesting point. It feels like sometimes like we have an idea of, okay, this is great, this is game changer, we need to do that. But for a lot of people on the business perspective, when we're not sharing with people who are also in academia and have a common understanding of what's going on, it won't make sense until they can just see it or touch it or like do
Mm.
something with it, like you mentioned, a POC. um, and that's a very interesting point. And like you mentioned, we can always play around with things, break things, so that we can quickly put together something that people can see, touch, play, and by doing so, it enhance one's career, but it also um, give way more interpretability and observability from a human perspective based on like the roadmap, stakeholders, and so on. That's super interesting. I'm going to pursue with a question that goes in the same direction, which is what makes a great solution architect? Or in general, you've had multiple roles in your career and you had a lot of experiences that you can comment on. So I would be very curious from your perspective. Also, you've been for a long time in the field, so I'm super curious about how you've seen it evolved and where do you think it's going. So that's something that I'll ask you later. But coming back on a great professional, let's say solution architect, but if you want to add more roles that you had in the past, I would love also to hear that. How to be great? Is it cost in mind? Is it like building bugs constantly, being on the edge of I know what's going on, state of the art, and I know what are the pains, and I know how to combine both. But like I'm sure there are way more things that comes to mind in terms of being great. So do you want to comment on that? How to be great?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I mean, a solution architect is a broad term for roles that are more or less similar but can diverge in many ways. For instance, like there are like more solution architects that are more, let's say, close to sales cycle, and some are more technical, maybe do deep dives with customers and help them solve solutions. And those are bit two different roles, to be honest, and can be a bit have different responsibilities and different impact anyway. But for me, it's always good, and that's probably another thing that I didn't mention early from the difference between academia and in business is it's not always about the technology, it's about the business and the business problems you want to solve. Customers in most times understand business more than technology, like in our roles, if you are a bit more technical, you are always excited about the technology, like let's give the example of LLMs and what's happening around LLMs can easily uh, get into that area and get very excited about the technology. We have libraries opening every week. We have models developed every month or so. A lot of advancement happening in very close time. And if you go to the customer more than often and speak about the technology and you are excited, they may get your excitement, and maybe they understand if they are come from this technology background, but it's all about the business. Companies are here to work on business differentiators to solve these business problems and basically enhance their products, their sales cycles, and so on. And your role actually is to find that right balance, to understand your customer, in order to help them, you need to understand, to understand their business, what makes the difference for them, and then understanding their place, how you can give this technology or maybe these tools that you are working on, or maybe these features that are great, how can they help them bring business value to their organizations. And that's probably the most important things that you need to capture there. And well, the market actually have been evolving for several years, but the role is more or less the same. The technology changes, the way we do technology is changing fundamentally, but the way companies do business is usually more or less evolving at slower pace, you know, and you need to understand that business value and outcomes that could be helpful to your customer. Now, even if you are not in a solution architecture role, even if you are like in IT and working with your organization to work towards that goal, always this, maybe be more excited about what the technology can bring to you rather than the technology itself. Okay, there is this new feature that is coming, maybe this new model, how it can help me solve business problems, what is the value I'm going to get from that. And as soon as you understand that, it gives you more, let's say, versatility, and help you actually be more comfortable bringing this to stakeholders to help you actually work towards a bigger impact. And that's at the end what is important.
Mm, I love it. It makes me think of the make it seem effortless phrase. So what do I mean by that? It's like it's awesome, and for someone more technical, we need to have this vision on the latest things, play around with it, build things around. But the magic happens when we listen to the problems that we want to solve and we're able to apply what we've learned. But the magic is not from what we've learned. That does like no one care. And I feel like having an
Exactly.
academic mindset, like when we move an academic mindset towards a business, then we really try to understand like the frontier of the business, like we would with any field that we're investigating in. And I feel that this is super interesting because I can be the best building solutions if I don't have a clear way or a clear path to understand why I'm going to build this and what metrics are important. Because maybe most of the time some clients aren't mature even in like measuring the right things, let's say. And so by not
Exactly.
measuring the right things, even though I do the best job ever and I add the most value, if it is not taken into account because it's biased or it haven't been said properly based on like the main important things of the business, then it is worth nothing. So I don't know.
Exactly.
I drift a little bit, but I think it relates to what you were sharing.
Mm,
Um,
Definitely. Definitely. It's how you measure impact. That's a very important point. How you measure impact, you know. You are
uh,
solving a business problem and you want to measure that impact, and how this solution you are proposing to me that is cool, that maybe appeared yesterday and it's everyone is talking about, how can that help me solve my business problem? And if I want to do that, how I quantify that, how I measure that. If I can't do it properly, then probably either I'm not using that right, or maybe it's not useful in this case. And
mm,
why spend money and the efforts around that?
mm,
So definitely, the conversation starter is the business value. How you quantify it, how you quantify the impact, how you measure that, and how can you put this technology at work and these solutions and tools at work in order to achieve that goal.
mm.
That's probably the main thing to do before starting a project.
Awesome. I think we could dive maybe a little bit deeper on one of your experiences, or maybe you can combine
Mm,
a different of them. But could you share with us a time or times where you worked with clients, and like what did you do to set up in advance like the metrics you are going to use, like what success would mean, like how would you go about understanding the client solution, then how would you go about deploying thinking process of like what are we going to do from a technical perspective, the fun part, let's say, for some people.
mm,
For many people that are more on the technical side,
mm,
could you share maybe on that like concrete example, or maybe just high level of different
mm,
clients, like
mm,
lessons that you've learned
mm.
to build this roadmap?
Yeah. I mean, usually, especially let's take, for instance, when I work as a solution architect, maybe before with AWS or now with Databricks. is like when you start a new project, or maybe a customer is starting a new project and want to solve something. The first usually few questions you ask is around the business. What is the business? What is what they are trying to solve, and how they are expecting to do that. More often than less is like the customer is not starting a business from scratch. They have something, in place, something maybe running with legacy technology as well. And the real question is how we make that better, how we modernize that, and if we do that, what do we get in the process? So the first thing to do, and this is maybe half of the work, is actually to try to understand that, like try to really scope it, like what is the business, what they are trying to do, what their objective, and what they have existing today, and why it is painful. Take that pain quantified, maybe if it can be, or at least understand it, and then try to propose this architecture that helps solve this according to the key metrics. Sometimes, like TCO, for instance, this can be a problem for many companies. Like I'm running today on the cloud and I'm running this legacy application, and it's costing me a lot, millions in a year, and I'm wondering if I can reduce that bill. Can we help with that? Then what is the problem you want to solve? Like for instance, for customers, some customers, okay, right now I'm working, I'm doing things a certain way, and I have like the updates every day, or maybe every 2 weeks. But I'm wondering if my business actually could benefit if I get a real time response. Maybe sometimes every hour, or in some cases, I got some customers actually that were looking for responses under the 100 milliseconds, for instance, and that could have an impact on the business in terms of like money generated, like revenue generated, and in terms also of the customer trust. And it could work backward from the customer, understand the customer needs, and work backward from that. Then comes the technology here. Like if you're working streaming, for instance, you can think about Kafka, a managed service for Kafka, for instance, with something like Spark Streaming, low latency, or maybe even Flink, or and put the technology of the service of that, and design the architecture. Listen to their pain points, show them how they can help the pain points, and see the technical limitation, whether this is feasible or not. Because sometimes you get excited about the technology, you overlook the limitation, and that's something that, as a solution architect, for instance, should really start with. What are the limitations? Can my technology that I'm working on help really solve that? If it can, we can do it. If we can't, what are the workarounds? Would the workarounds work for the customer? Would they solve their problems? If yes, let's propose that to the customer, and then help them plan. Because defining the architecture and scoping and defining everything is one thing, and then executing is another. And you need to help the customer also plan this execution, and help them actually get in the right path for the execution as well. And that will be a win-win situation for everyone. And yeah, but the secret here always starts from the business requirements and technical requirements from the stakeholder, whether it's a customer, whether it's another organization, or whether another team in your organization.
Makes sense. I'm thinking also if, let's say for a client, we define a roadmap and so on. It feels to me that the iterative process of each time, speaking of AWS, I think it's on a Lex Freeman podcast, and Jeff Bezos said, he talked about his day one thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
And I really like this day one thinking idea, um, because it feels that, okay, maybe at a certain date in time, we'll have ideas of everything that we can do. But when we work very close with business, and when we are from a technical perspective of things, then we have so much more insights because we understand way better like what's everything, and we have the map, and the more time we spend around it, the better we understand the map of what's really there and what can we do and what can we not do. I feel that from this perspective, there is this iterative process of reprioritizing. And like you said, like, okay, does it, okay, I have it daily. Do I really want to have it real time? Or I saw that this data is there and we don't use it. And we could, now that we've built what we've built, we could do something that would be um, like have a low cost in terms of like developments, but maybe a higher impact than the roadmap that we predict. And it feels that most of the time, like roadmaps are being set and we just go, go. But it feels like if we combine an iterative process and with reprioritization, um, it has a lot of value and potential. Those are just assumptions of mine. What do you think on this point?
You are right to bring that actually, and yeah, it's finally an agility process. You don't
Mm,
have to be too rigid actually in order not to lose in agility, but always you have to set the perimeters also. Because sometimes you can go like outside the scope, and you are interested in doing a lot of things, and finally you don't do even a viable minimal product. And for me, at least, like also another expression from Amazon and Jeff Bezos is one way, two-way doors approach. Like a one-way door approach is when you make a decision and you can get back. Like if
yeah.
you decide, for instance, to do something and you can't overdo that decision.
Mm,
That's something that sticks with you. And if you get it wrong, it can have a catastrophic impact for you and your stakeholders. So those decisions you need to think about very hard. You make sure you make those decisions right. Now, the two-way door decision are decisions that you can overdo quickly, and it doesn't cost you that much or anything at all.
hmm
And those where you can get that freedom, like, okay, today I'm doing something, but if I change it or decide to change it later, I can do that. That those decisions shouldn't take your time. They shouldn't bother you that much, because actually it's easy to retract them
mm,
and help you with the flexibility as well. So yeah, I mean, when you decide the project, maybe there are some hard lines that you need to decide to stick with. Then you have this agility process, and you mentioned something also as well. Sometimes also technology, like you used to do something and now you have the technology that help you do something that you couldn't do in the past. And that could be also a drive for your decision as well as the project moves. Like for instance, in the past we couldn't do this like under the 100 millisecond decision in real time with large scale systems. Now we can do that. If we can apply it, can we do that for our business? Would it be impactful? Would it be good? And sometimes also the technology can help you derive decisions in that regard. But yeah, I mean, I'm not the best person, let's say, to speak about agility and like those agility approaches. But definitely, yeah, there are lots of rooms for flexibility and improvement there.
awesome. All right, I'm going to ask you some insights um, on your view of the evolution of the field of technology in general. So cloud related, but like for example, before MapReduce, then Spark arrived. So I'd like to ask you about what are like the key moment that you've experienced in your career where you were where you had a wow effect on new concepts, and what are you looking today as of the next wows?
Oh, yeah. The next ones are like a bit complicated, to be honest. But yeah, there are a lot of wow moments there in my career. So yeah, I started, as I mentioned, back in 2010. And the first wow was like this first era of NoSQL, if you remember. Like
Hmm
we used to do these databases, RDBMS, relational databases for like 2 decades. We didn't know anything else. And
hmm
we stuck with that model. And suddenly we opened this new era for NoSQL, for instance, with Amazon DynamoDB and how they like deploying worldwide. And a lot of theories also came from academia at that moment, actually
hmm
like the CAP theorem, like whether we have this availability, performance, and consistency constraints, and we can't have the three at the same time. So we need to sacrifice something in order to get better things. And that was the first moment where we like it was disruptive. I mean, we were thinking one way and we switched to another way, and that created actually a new like direction that benefited greatly people in data and AI world.
Mm-hmm.
Later on came Hadoop, and it was started with MapReduce from Google back in 2003, their famous paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's also changed a lot of things, like we used to think sequentially for data, we don't know how to do things really quickly to have this large scale parallelization of data processing. And with MapReduce, we made that simple, relatively simple, that suddenly we were in the era of sitting analyzing few gigs, maybe terabytes of data, and suddenly we knew how to process and get value from petabytes of data, and that was huge, suddenly we had these mines of gold of data that we can exploit and get value from, which changed a lot of things. Then there was like a concept that came later on, the concept of data lake. The data lake came, and suddenly we say, okay, bring it all. Let's take all structured and unstructured data. We have one place to put it there, and we figure out how to get value from it later. But anything you have, let's put it there in the data lake. And that was an amazing thing, actually, that happened compared to data warehouses and databases in the past. So those mines of data, we now have Hadoop, we have systems like Hive, like Presto, that allow us to analyze those petabytes of data. But we didn't know how to govern that. Quickly it became complicated. It became like some folks called it then data swamps. Where you can't find anything. It became more complex. And suddenly we found ourselves in the same challenges that we found in databases earlier. That's including data governance and access issues. But later on, the companies realize, I mean, Hadoop is not a replacement for a data warehouse, and MapReduce is not a replacement of that. Even with the proper governance on Hadoop, you still have fragmented systems. You have like data sitting in databases, data sitting in data warehouses, and data sitting in data lakes. These are exploited sometimes with the same personas, but sometimes with different personas, whether it's data scientists, data engineers, or data analysts. And we end up with silos everywhere, in data silos, like fragmented. You have different systems hosting different data. Governance that is siloed, which is a risk for any organization on like how to give the proper access and ensure people are not accessing maybe sensitive data, or maybe not risking getting data accessed by anyone who shouldn't have. And then we have this business and persona silos as well, data analysts and the data scientists can't work together. And sometimes if they work together, it could be good for them, they also work with different tools. So we have these tools silos. Data scientists would like more to work with Python libraries. Data analysts is used to BI tools and so on. So finally, we tried to simplify the big data and the era, but it still ended up with a complex ecosystem with different silos and different fragmentation of systems. Maybe the other wow moment for me was the lake house. The lake house, a term coined by Databricks, but now used by many companies, is when we proposed this system actually to eliminate these silos, gather data, no more complex ETL. Data is sitting in the same place, but you can have the different workloads on the same data in the same place. Whether you are data scientist or data analyst, you doing BI, you doing machine learning and data engineering, you can work all in the same platform on the same data without losing any benefits, either from data lake or data warehousing. And that's another amazing moment, And this is a trend today. So, for instance, Databricks coined that term and started it, but we have other companies actually implementing their own lake house technologies, and this is something that we are seeing more and more as a trend, even from hyperscalers like Microsoft. And this concept actually makes and Me personally, I saw the change in the ease of use and in decrease of agility and efficiency when you switch to a data lake concept. No more complex ETL. You can govern everything in one place and give access to the right persona to handle the right data without having to make data copies, and they can collaborate in one environment. That's actually remove a lot of barriers and a lot of hours of data engineering and integrations that could be, let's say, complex and let's say a challenge for any organization, to be honest. How are things going? So there are a lot of interesting actually patterns from architecture and platform point of view that are coming. One of them is the concept of data mesh, and this is true for large organizations, like they have complex organigram put in place. They have this line of businesses and they want actually to get the better of data and value from data across organization in a collaborative yet a safe approach. And this paradigm that we can maybe talk about later on can help them actually solve this kind of issues. The other thing, and for me, this is a huge, and this is something that we should actually tackle today rather than tomorrow, is the unification of governance and usage between data and AI, because we are yet creating another silo, between data and AI. You have a technology, a platform usually to handle data at any organization, and then you have the tool that you use for doing AI and ML, and sometimes get switching between the two environments of data scientist with the data engineer with the data analyst is not easy. You need to move data around. You need to give accesses. You need to govern the accesses and controlling the accesses between models, machine learning models, and then data itself in two different places. And we are creating yet another silos that could prevent companies from getting value quicker. And the unification of data and AI, I think, is something crucial that many service providers should focus on, uh, and where you ideally can have one environment to manage all, like both in terms of integrations and access control as well, and that's something we should be looking at very closely. The other thing also is the move into production. Today we have DevOps or DevSecOps, or we have Data Ops and we have ML Ops. Those tools are like really useful and necessary to get like things work in production, because at the end of the day you need to put things in efficient, robust way in production. And if we can find a way also to unify, integrate those tools together and those approaches together to be rather native than doing some integration work or patching work, that's something also that could be very helpful for advancing this area in the future.
That's awesome. You covered many super interesting topics. Uh, yeah, lake house. So correct me if I'm wrong. So I'd like to come back on different points, and I'll be brief, but I'd like to go back on the lake house, on the data mesh, on the data catalog in general, and on the AI ML versus all the data. Correct me about the lake house. So to me, a lake house is a place where we have the data and we can also build warehouses on top of it. And then we kind of just take from a data lake house to warehouses and to then put data maybe in a data catalog or so on. But could you maybe correct me on the lake house ID?
Yeah, lake house is a concept actually to unify both the data lake and the data warehouse. Like companies, and many of them still do today, have like on one place the data lake where you have structured and unstructured data, mostly for like systems like Hadoop, MapReduce, Spark, and so on. And then on the other hand, they have these clean data warehouses based on some proprietary technology. Usually, this is the enterprise data warehouse where you put your data after you clean it, in small data sets that are not like very, very big, to be honest, cleaned and used whether enterprise wide or maybe for a specific business. And then between the two, usually you need a complex ETL that copies data from the data lake to the data warehouse, sometimes return the data back to the data lake, and then have two modes of governance, one based on like what's in the data lake, whether it's files or tables, and the other is specifically and strictly dedicated to the data warehouse. That creates these silos I was talking about. So some personas are using one, not the other, or maybe trying to access, but they don't know about, they don't have access to. So this is a data governance for fraction between the two as well. They have different catalogs and they have different storage, different data formats. So the lake house is to say, okay, rather than making two these systems and making the integration of the two very complex, what if we can have one storage, one place that give us like the opportunity to store structured and unstructured data with formats like table formats like Delta Lake, that is open source. And then let's have like any kind of workloads that we want to have working on those data that could
Mm,
be available enterprise wide with
mm,
control access, of course.
mhm,
And then, yes, on the same data, we don't make two copies, just one copy of data. The data analyst that do BI and needs a data warehouse can use that with the proper technology. For instance, Databricks proposed technology that is called Photon and the Delta Engine that gives you the best performance there, out there. So it's not different from the performance you get from data warehouse. In many cases, it's even better. And you can do your work on the same data that is used for machine learning by other personas. Those are the personas that use Python libraries, maybe use Spark, PySpark, and maybe do even more complex stuff. And they also have access data with access control as well. They work together. And then they can collaborate between them because now they are working on the same data in the same platform. The collaboration is easier, and then also think about how like you to provide tools to simplify ETL processes if you need to do something to the data engineering. This makes all your personas working in the same place on one storage that is open source. That is the trend today. So we have table formats including Delta Lake and maybe Iceberg and Hoodie, and you have like one governance. And this is, I can't stress the importance of this enough, like one governance to have all your workloads on the same data. And this is like gives you visibility, gives you real access control, and help you actually understand your business better because of this. So this concept actually is now the trend. Many companies are following in the footsteps of Databricks to provide their own lake houses, and this is actually what's helped companies today like remove those barriers related to these silos, whether they are data silos or people silos.
amazing. Yeah, and it really feels like this is where we're going forward, like a unified
Yeah.
solution. And Databricks has the best, to my perspective, like
Mm,
advanced on like unifying everything from the
mm,
lake house to the data catalog to like ML and
mm.
AI. Maybe you'll be able
Yeah.
to comment. Do you want
Uh,
to comment on that? Like, how does
yeah,
Databricks
definitely.
unify those
Yeah.
two parts?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Databricks released what we call Unity Catalog. This is an amazing technology, to be honest. I mean,
How recent is it,
it's a tech.
sorry? How
I
recent
think
is
it's
the Unity
since
catalog?
2021, I think, or 2022, to be honest.
Hmm.
It's something that came as a replacement and enhancement of the old legacy Hive Metastore. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
like Unity Catalog to unify, actually, for instance, for Databricks, your catalog company-wide for all your workspaces. You can have a big visibility on your data, whether sitting in in your account, and you have like different catalogs. So you have um, a hierarchical level between catalog, database, or schema and table, and like you can define more catalogs in one central metastore where you can have visibility over all your data assets. What's amazing about this technology is unified governance for data in your data lake. So you have one governance in one place to control all the accesses, give the freedom to users to have their own catalog if you want to experiment and so on. And it helps you actually manage, for instance, your development, qualification, and production environments better because of this definition. But what is more amazing about this Unity catalog is the integration of the governance of AI and ML. Now you can add models also to Unity catalog, and then you unify the governance not just for data, whether it's data warehouse, data lake in one lake house, but you can have also your models governed the same way, all in one platform. And that's a big breakthrough in terms of governance and removing those barriers we were talking about.
Amazing. And this is when data mesh comes into the game, where like we have all this data in the Unity's catalog, but the power of who have access to this data and who can give access to this data, correct me if I say anything wrong, huh? But is decentralized. And so the sales department will have an owner, the HR department will have an owner, the marketing department will have an owner, and all those owners can independently give access to specific parts of projects that they've developed. That may be a project salespeople, the team of data around salespeople, because they worked on specific use case. But this use case could be very interesting to the marketing department to like do some cross of like some data that they've studied there. And so because it's decentralized, this is the power of data mesh, like having a marketplace of projects in the company, make it super easy to find data, to retrieve models, retrieve different things that we've built along the way in the company. Would you add something about data mesh? Like what do you
Yeah.
like about data mesh, and am I correct kind of?
Yeah, the concept of data mesh is really an interesting one, and I think it's about time to have something like this. So this, in fact, decentralization is, in fact, very important to big organizations, like with different line of businesses, with different departments that they
Yeah.
have this fragmentation between them and they don't communicate. And actually, what you want to do is not just like to give them the ability to share, but to govern as well. So by creating a data owner and data products where a team or a department or a line of business is responsible of their data product, that could be in itself a lake house or data lake. And they can do this actually in a way, autonomous way, maybe with their data engineers, where maybe with their admins, and make this data product. Then what is important also is the ability not just to have and to share this data with different line of businesses or different departments in order to get more value from data and help other teams get that value, but also while doing it actually with zero copy. This is a very important also, maybe for different reasons, for efficiency, for cost, but mostly also for energy inefficiency and so on. So the ability to do that with zero copy is an important one, but also the ability to have that data product and assets discoverable within the company. So the ability to anyone to come and say, okay, I'm looking for this kind of data, maybe even sometimes with the natural language question, or maybe with the keywords, and looking for some kind of data, and you see, hey, there is a line business in organization I have no clue about is proposing this kind of data. Maybe you could automatically ask them and ask for access. Maybe they can give me, because I have a very good business, let's say, purpose for doing so. And that adds a lot of value and efficiency to any organization and any company. And I mean, there are challenges around building data mesh architectures today. The technology is getting there slower and slower, but with steady pace. But if we look at some of the amazing technologies that we've seen in the recent years, we are closer and closer to build a real production-ready data mesh. For instance, I'll give just the example, for instance, of Databricks, because I'm working here today. You have the Unity catalog, which is enhanced with what we call at Databricks the data intelligence engine, that can help you actually discover the assets with natural language, that can help you actually have this layer of semantics on top of the Unity catalog. Of course, there are other solutions like Colibra or open source like DataHub that can help you build this kind of catalogs. But also this technology that, in my opinion, should be, well, it is already open source and adopted by many companies. It's called delta sharing. It allow you actually to share data with zero copy, but with access control based on tokens and everything. And it could be a standard actually to making this kind of exchange and data sharing possible with the Delta Lake for storage. And it helps actually customers build towards a more unified way, efficient way to share data. I mean, everywhere. Can build with it a multi-cloud solution very easily. You can build with it a hybrid, let's say, on-prem cloud solution, and it is the way for the future and the way to build an efficient data mesh, to be honest.
Amazing. Love it. I would love to ask you more about all those things, but we're kind of at the end of the episode. So I have the three last questions for you, and I'm going to ask you a question from a previous guest. Those first questions are really quick. The first one, where can people know more about you? Like, do you post on LinkedIn? Do you have a blog? Do you have like where could people connect, reach out? Maybe you don't have anything. You what do you have going on?
I invite people to maybe follow me and contact with me on LinkedIn today. To be honest, I don't have a personal blog. I used to publish on the AWS blog in the future, in Databricks blogs, blog posts, maybe in Medium as well. But yeah, of course, I always welcome people to get in touch over LinkedIn, and maybe we have a good discussion and conversation there. Would be happy to answer any question.
Amazing. Okay, two questions more. One included including the questions from a previous guest. So, do you have a message for the Let's Talk AI community? So, for everyone who is still out there, by the way, thank you for staying to the end with us. It has been a very extensive and technical episode, maybe, but I enjoy so much this conversation, and this is not every day that we can have your kind of expertise and your insights. So, thanks again. But do you have a message for everyone who is listening? It can be professional, it can be personal, it can be whatever you want.
Yeah, I would say this is our exciting times to be in data and AI. There are lots of things happening, to be honest. This is really, really early days. This is really exciting times, especially for AI. And yeah, I think we are in the time of reshaping this kind of technology in the service of use cases and business. So sky is the limit. Try to learn, try to look at what's happening. You can find just on LinkedIn amazing stuff happening every day, and amazing imagination of use cases. And maybe try to, think about how you can apply this technology to new things. I think we are in early days for that. We have this amazing technology breakthrough since ChatGPT and the LLMs and foundational models, and we don't know where to use them yet. Try to figure that out. This is actually the work of people like you, and I think this could result in an amazing use cases that we didn't even know about or think about when we started to think about the technology.
Awesome. And that relates to what we mentioned earlier about agility and like thinking out of the box, kind of,
Exactly.
whereas adding continuously value. Amazing. All right. We're going to the question guest. So it's from Leon Gordon. He's the CEO of Onyx Data. And basically, the question goes about legislation and regulation. So, what are you doing, or what do you think is important doing regarding regulation and compliance around AI? What are things you mentioned at the beginning that most of the time it was political decisions around data? So, yeah, what do you do, or what do you think we should be doing regarding this?
Yeah, I think this is one of the fundamental questions that humanity as a whole should think about and answer in this just few years, because the technology is advancing in an incredible pace. To be honest, I'm not a legislator, so I will give my 2%, maybe first recommendation for legislators. get in touch with business guys, with technical guys. They could help with their how they can imagine the technology. They know the technology the best, the limitation of it, what it can do, what it can't. But as humans, I think today we should really find the right equilibrium between not cripple on the technology advancement. This is like had the potential to be very beneficial for all humanity, but at the same time we have these fundamental rights that a human being should have, like privacy, like author rights, that we should think about. And this also may be a message to all um, uh, people working in AI technology and business. To We also need to make this as a core, let's say, concern for us, to work towards actually how we can find mechanisms and methods to include this in our research and advance in this area, to be incorporated actually in the technology to help actually protect these rights, which is fundamental as well.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, Houssem, for coming on the show, for sharing all your knowledge today. I had an amazing time, and I wish you to have an amazing day. For everyone who is still listening,
It
thank
was
you so
very
much.
nice.
Feel free to subscribe, join the channel, leave a comment. We'll answer them. And like I said, thanks a lot. And I wish you to have an amazing day, Houssem.
Thank you, Thomas. It was a pleasure to be on your podcast. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work. This is a very good podcast that can help actually professional in the field advance their career, maybe, and learn from people with various profiles. That we appreciate a lot. Thank you for the good work.
Awesome. Thanks, Houssem.